CNT125 Wireless LAN Lab. We just left off getting our workstations and phones, getting an IP address and connection over to the ISP. So we're now going to shift our focus over to the wireless side of the network. And again, real quick in perspective, we've built a network here that would properly support wireless because this will all be in its own VLAN, its own subnet. So we could, if we wanted to, start putting filtering rules, access lists up here to handle this traffic, limiting certain protocols, limiting where it's going, that sort of thing. So we've set up our network to properly add wireless. That's part of the point of what we're doing on this lab. All right, now when we shift to the wireless side, actually this semester is a bit of a bonus. Normally in a lab room, we don't have a whole lot of wireless equipment. We definitely don't have, 12 wireless controllers to configure. So actually doing this semester remote using Packet Tracer, we're able to do a little bit better wireless configuration in Packet Tracer than we would in the lab room. So it's a little bit of bonus for you guys. Alrighty, what we're going to do is the wireless controller is going to get plugged into our switch along with the access points. So I'm going to move things around just a little bit for my sake, just for easier connection. So I'm going to put those three there, and this laptop is going to get plugged into the controller. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect these up. I'm just going to use a plain old ordinary straight through cable from here, and I'm going to go into my 21 port. 21, 22, 23, 24 are all wireless VLAN ports. I'm going to plug the access point in here to 22. I'm going to plug this access point into 23. And then I'm actually going to cable this laptop directly into this wireless controller, because this laptop is what we're going to use to configure the wireless controller. These devices will eventually wirelessly connect to our access points. So there is my physical connections. We're now going to add a basic IP on the controller and a basic IP on the laptop that will be able to start using them or configuring them. So in the wireless controller, I'm going to click on it. There's what it would look like in real life. We're going to click the config tab, and we're going to go to the management tab, and we're going to plug in the IP address that we want this to have. So I'm going to look over at my map. I said on my map that I'm using 96.2 for this wireless controller, because 96.1 was the router subinterface. 96.2 is going to be the controller. I'll fix my subnet mask here to 224.0. I need the default gateway of 192.168.96.1, which is the subinterface for the router for this wireless VLAN. And the DNS server 10.10.10.2, which again is over here. Okay, that is basically applied. So we're going to close that out for now. I'm going to go to the laptop here, and I'm going to configure it to connect to the wireless controller. I'll use a static IP here, 192.168, and we're going to use 96.3, the third IP address in this subnet. 224.0. Gateway 192.168.96.1. Again, my sub-interface address. DNS server 10.10.10.2, which again is the DNS server over here at the ISP. Again, we'll close this guy out. So we'll give them just a second. That's what we're doing here. We'll give them a second. Let's power up the lightweight access point. That's what these guys are. I'll click on them. You notice there's only one port here. There really is not much of anything I can do, especially if it's not powered on. So I'm going to power this guy on, plug him in there, let him boot. Same thing with this guy, plug him in and let him boot. Okay. These are designed to work with the controller. These lightweight access points are designed to work with the controller. All right, we'll let them boot. And now we're going to use, before we do that, we'll, now that things are booting, let's check a couple basic things over here. On my laptop, if I hold it over, I should see the 192.168.96.3, gateway 96.1. The controller, I should see 96.2. All right, down there, 96.2. And if I hold over the access point, you'll see that there's no IP address assigned to it. It's not connected anywhere yet. So this is something that'll happen in due time as we get this configured and it starts talking with these access points. Alrighty, so let's now use our laptop. We're going to ping the controller, and then eventually we're going to browse into it, and we're going to configure the wireless controller through our browser. So I'm opening up my laptop here. Let's open up the command prompt. Let's try to ping the 192.168.96.2, the controller. And we should hopefully get a little communication here. There we go. So now that we're able to ping it, we should be able to open our browser and we should be able to browse to it. 192.168.96.2 is my wireless controller IP. You'll see there's a lot of activity going here. This is going to take a second to load, so be patient. This will load a splash screen for us, and then we're going to put in some basic settings on this to get connection to it, or actually give it a basic config, if you will. So be patient a second. We should eventually see a splash screen here. We'll plug in the user account. We'll plug in some IP settings, or verify some IP settings. Then we'll plug in some basic wireless settings for this controller. And then this controller will start talking to the access points. You can do it. You can do it. I know you can. Yeah, it's still working on it back there. All right. You can do it. That's why I put a warning in there. This does take a minute. You have to be patient, especially the first time you're connecting in. As you connect in more, it gets a little quicker. There you go. There's our splash screen. All right, first thing we're going to create is our admin account. We'll just use the generic name of admin. Password for this one, we'll do password 123. Password 123, and I did make it capital P. I'm going to click Start. This is going to bring up a page where we're going to plug a little bit more detailed information in. We'll use a name on this guy is WLC-01 for wireless controller 01. All the date and time is fine. The management IP address, well, we're going to basically re-enter what we had plugged in on the outside. 192.168.96.2. Subnet mask 255.255.224.0. Gateway 192.168.96.1. Again, this is the same information I plugged in earlier just to connect to it. This is now going in part of the config. We're going to leave that VLAN alone at 0. We'll say next. Here we're going to create our wireless settings. So we're going to create a oh, come on, get down there. Next, there we go. Our network name we're going to use is guest, G-U-E-S-T. We'll use WPA2 personal. The passphrase we're going to use is guest 123. G-U-S-T 123. I'm just using this one right here. We're going to say next. We're going to leave all that alone. We'll say next. This is a chance for us to verify. So I'm checking, there's my name, username admin, there's the system name, 96.2 for the IP, 96.1 for the gateway, guest, WAPU2 personal, there's our passphrase. All that looks good. We're going to do apply. It's going to say, are you sure you want to apply these and reboot? I'm going to say yes. I'll say, okay, reboot. So this will reboot kind of like your homeowner router does. During the reboot, it's going to apply all these settings. This is just going to sit here and basically reboot. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to open up my command prompt. And then I'm actually going to try to ping it. And when I start getting some replies, I know I should be able to browse back in. So ping 192.168.96.2 is the IP address of this guy. This might not respond for a little bit until it has rebooted and applied those settings. Once it does, then I should be able to browse back into it and look at some settings and look at some look at some basic settings on this controller. So I'll go back to my command prompt, or excuse me, back to my browser. And I'm now going to access this, but I need to use HTTPS. HTTP will not work on this one. So HTTPS://192.168.96.2 is the IP. Again, it does take a second. It does not come up immediately. I'll use my admin login. So I'll say admin, password of password123, just as we had created it earlier. We'll do a login. Again, this takes a minute for it to load. If I were to look back here, I see a lot of activity between the two. Okay, this does take a minute to load. And there is my interface. There is my interface for this wireless controller. I have now configured the basics on here, and I've even configured some of the specifics for wireless on here, and I'm into it. So I'm going to have you take a look at one or two things. We'll look at the summary page here and the access point summary. So scrolling down here, here's my access point summary. It has picked up and talked to two APs. There's two lightweight access points. Cool, nice. Let's now look at the wireless option on the top menu up here. And we're going to see what it has learned or what is configured in there. Again, give it a second to load. This is not the most speedy. Here's the two access points it has discovered in our network. There's the IP addresses of them. And if I scroll across, it starts giving more specific information, how they're connected, etc. Eventually, as we get devices connected to them, there's even a client count in here. Number of clients that'll show how many clients are connected to that access point. Okay, so there's my two APs that are in the network. Nice. Now let's look at the wireless LAN option up here and see what wireless LANs are out there. And we should hopefully see the default or this guest network that we created. And there it is. There's the wireless LAN guest network. Wireless LAN ID number 1, if you will. If I click on that and open it up, I should see a little bit about this network or some settings on this network. So again, give it a second to load. You can do it. You can do it. Here's our guest network. There's our guest network. And I can see some general information on that. And I can go through and there's different tabs here that I can see specific information on this guest network. So now we've taken a little bit look at that. Let's now go out and look at what it has done with the access points. So actually, I'm just going to close this for now, just to keep our screen a little cleaner. Let's go out and take a look at these access points, and I will hover my mouse over them. And if I look, I see they do have an IP, 96.11. And if I look down below, it's connected to 192.168.96.2, my wireless controller, and it is part of the guest wireless LAN. Let's hover over this guy. This has an address of 96.12 and is connected to the 96.2 controller and is part of the wireless LAN guest network. So these access points now are working in tandem to create this guest wireless network. And I could have 3 or 4 more in here. This controller is able to support, I forget how many, 20 some access points, something like that. I don't remember the exact number, don't quote me, but it's able to handle quite a few. So these could be scattered around my building, providing a guest wireless network for my building. So there is my controller configured and set up, and my lightweight access points communicating with it and using that configuration that we gave the controller. We'll come back in the next part and start connecting up our devices to our wireless network.